In Nigeria today and Africa as a whole, women are working tirelessly to meet the daily food demands of their homes and the communities. Women are playing a central role in the agricultural process from farm to plate, making a key contribution to crop production, processing and marketing, despite limited access to tools, seeds and fertilizers, as well as funds. I am Ephraim Esther. We'll be back shortly after the break. Welcome back. In today's edition of the program Economy Watch, we are looking at the potentials of female farmers. Much has been said about the contribution of the female farmers in the nation building. In this edition, we shall review their impact and challenges, and we are going to do this with the Bank of Agriculture. We are going on a short break. When we return, we will bring you a brief report on the female farmers. Stay with us.
Nigeria. We are 198 million productive people with over 900,000 square kilometers of fertile land. Nigeria's banking system has emerged strong and resilient from the 2016 crisis, which has enhanced our productivity in agribusiness and manufacturing. Come, invest in Nigeria's agribusiness, manufacturing, and value-added mining. Enjoy the Central Bank of Nigeria-led initiatives in funding interventions, stabilized exchange rate, friendly capital repatriation regime, and many more. The robust monetary policy and interventions under President Buhari's administration has positioned the economy to target and attain a GDP growth of 6% with a strong and growing external reserves. Come, invest in Nigeria. Nigeria, ready for business.
Welcome back. Here is the brief report on the impact of female farmers and the nation building.
Harnessing the potentials of the female farmers in Nigeria. The Food and Agricultural Organization assessment in 2011 shows that yields would increase by 20 to 30% if women were given the same access to farm inputs and assets as men. In Nigeria and Africa as a whole, crop production in staple foods is largely dependent on female labor. 70% of the agricultural workforce is male. 70% of the agricultural workforce is made up of women, who constitute 60 to 80% of labor force for food production. The 70% workforce of women in the agricultural sector has failed to translate into substantial socio-economic returns at household level. When women face high level of rural poverty, it is most likely difficult for women to use farming activities to bring themselves out of poverty because of low profit derived from crop sales at the local market. There are many challenges that have contributed to perpetual cycle of poverty for the female farmers due to poor education, lack of access to loan, low level of technology transfer due to depleted extension services coupled with a poor market linkage and high transport costs. Other factors such as customary traditions and land access have contributed to perceptions of women's subordinate role, often leaving them at a disadvantage when taking up opportunities to improve market access and generate higher farm income. Despite the extensive participation in agriculture production, women still lack incentives to invest in agricultural commodity market due to greater exposure to risk and vulnerability to external shocks. And most often, the female farmers find themselves located in a less profitable production end of the value chain, unable to capitalize on market opportunities in processing and trade. It is very unfortunate to know that even where women have succeeded in opening up high-value niche markets, they often see themselves being pushed out by men even for crops traditionally occupied by women. The way forward. In Nigeria and African nations, agricultural growth is dependent on the improvement of female farm productivity, which is central in the delivery of poverty alleviation. By improving the amount that female farmers produce, substantial reduction in overall household poverty can be achieved as a result of improved income generation and enhanced rural livelihood. Government must work in a concerted effort to ensure that policies and strategies mainstream female gender in order to address the central role that women play in shaping national food security. Until government's aim is to close the gap between political rhetoric and the reality on the ground, Nigerian female farmers will have to look at their local institutions, both customary and formal, in the push for reform.
Welcome back. Our guest today is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Bank of Agriculture, Mr. Kabiru Adamu. With him, we shall review the working relationship of Bank of Agric and female farmer. And our second guest is Engineer Ibrahim Osman. He is the Vice President, Northwest Zone of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. With him, we are looking at the impact of African Continental Free Trade Area on the Nigerian economy.
You know, part of our mandate is youth and women empowerment. What the bank has been doing, because of the vast size of the country and the limited resources that the bank has, it will be almost impossible to be everywhere. But what we are developing now is an agency banking relationship. We are collaborating with NIPOST. NIPOST, they are in almost all the local government areas of the country. What we are doing is to open a branch in each of the NIPOST location. So in the next 1 year or so, we will be having branches in all the local government areas of Nigeria. By doing that, we are bringing our services closer to women in the rural areas, whereby they can have easy contact with the bank. They can be supported by way of advisory services. They can be supported by way of rendering services to them. Aside from that, we have also signed MOUs with about 3 banks to provide a settlement banking relationship, and that too is majorly targeted at bringing our services to the women folk in particular, and youth. What that does is that the commercial banks will provide us with their e-products in form of ATM cards, internet, banking facilities. Then those products will now be given to our customers, the farmers. Then they will now have easy access to financial services through the ATM cards. Where the ATM cards are not available, we have agents in all the rural areas, like kiosk owners that have direct agency relationship with the commercial banks, and the farmers can go with their ATM cards to withdraw money from their accounts. The issue of internet connectivity can be a challenge, but the banks that we have can work offline, and within a range, immediately the machine can be moved to a location where connectivity is available, and the transaction can be updated. Currently there are 2 projects that are targeted direct to women, which we are collaborating with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. Their mandate is part of their mandate rather is to ensure that the women folk enjoy all the support, that government gives, particularly now that the focus of, government is, on agriculture. We have the ROPI and the LIFE, products. Those products are not only limited to agriculture, but they are more or less an empowerment kind of, program that supports women in various, trades. But we focus more, on the agricultural, value chain, because there is what, the opportunities are higher. Number one, you see, whatever that you do in life, whether business or any, initiative, it is important for you to understand what you are doing. That is what you want to achieve, and then how you are going to achieve that. And therefore knowledge plays a very important role, in that. There is need for women to understand the opportunities, business opportunities in agriculture very well, so that they can effectively take advantage of those opportunities for them to grow, whatever they are doing. The bank is supporting in that regard, by providing, one form of training, or the other, to enlighten them. We've been holding, workshops all over the country, sensitizing, farmers and those that wants to go into farming, to understand, the business of farming. If you are going into farming, it shouldn't be just the traditional, thinking about farming, just going to farm to do the usual thing, come back. No, it's beyond that. You need to understand that there are hybrid inputs that you can put in that will give you higher production, that will give you money, at the end of the day. If you don't have capital, you go nowhere. Produce. So whether they borrow or they don't borrow, we create the market for them through, anchors or off-takers that will buy whatever that is produced. And then, like I told you, the development partners, are there. They are interested in, providing support, services, in terms of, technology, in terms of, capacity building, in terms of, inputs and what have you. And all those, support are given to farmers by the development partners, free of charge as a pilot scheme, that will show them, the way out. Quite recently, because of the insurgency in, the northeastern part of, Nigeria, so many women, have become widows. So many children are orphans. They have lost home. They are in the IDP camps. They don't have anything doing. The future to them, is lost. But based on the government's commitment, to revitalize them and, revive them and put them back, to their respective, villages and communities. The bank is recently cooperating with the National Refugees Commission, in providing capacity building for women and children in particular that are going into different, businesses to develop, their skills. Then provide, in collaboration with the state governments, places of doing the business. If one is going into the farming to get the land, where to farm, and then the bank provides, support services by way of, lending. So we are doing quite a lot. Part of our mandate is, enhancing food security. That means increasing food production, job creation, wealth creation, import, substitution, and several other, mandates. So when we support the women and children in particular, apart from, other engagements that we do, one, we want to see our achievement in terms of job creation. Have we provided jobs? Yes, we have. Is it on a sustainable basis? Yes. And with that now, we continue. If our support is not achieving, those objectives, we go back to review, our engagement and see areas where we have not done, so well, in terms of, planning, so that we can replan and be able to achieve, those objectives. By the time we achieve the mandate of, job creation, we want to see also in what way has our own support increased food production, and that can easily be determined from the, output of what is produced and what is obtaken. Once we are able to do that, and you are aware that when they produce, apart from people that are employed at the production level, some other people are also employed at the processing level. From processing level, you have people that are employed at transportation level, from the farm location to, the processing facility. At the processing facility, there is also employment, there. Then from there, to the market. Then from the market, to end users, or from the market, for export. So we review all those activities along the value chain to determine the extent of job that we have created and the production level, that we have achieved. Once we are able to do that, the next most important measure of performance is repayment. Because if there is success, the repayment will automatically come in, and then there will be repeat, business. So whatever we do, we look at it from the point of view of sustaining it over a longer, period of. Well, I have stated one, knowledge, very important. Our people need to understand, agriculture as a business. Once we are able to do that, it will simplify so many of, the other challenges. Number two, people must understand that whatever that is given out is from a revolving fund. And what that means is that people must repay back the loan so that others can use, or even they themselves, they can use. The notion that, the government support, is a largest, from government, is off it. There is nothing like that. People must appreciate government effort, be able to be transparent, in their transaction, with the Bank of Agriculture, and be able to repay back the loan so that others can also benefit from that.
Nigeria. We are 198 million productive people with over 900,000 square kilometers of fertile land. Nigeria's banking system has emerged strong and resilient from the 2016 crisis, which has enhanced our productivity in agribusiness and manufacturing. Come, invest in Nigeria's agribusiness, manufacturing, and value-added mining. Enjoy the Central Bank of Nigeria-led initiatives in funding interventions, stabilized exchange rate, friendly capital repatriation regime, and many more. The robust monetary policy and interventions under President Buhari's administration has positioned the economy to target and attain a GDP growth of 6% with a strong and growing external reserves. Come, invest in Nigeria. Nigeria, ready for business.
Well, it's just beginning to pick up, but it is going on very well. The only thing is that there is very uneven development. In some African countries, they don't actually manufacture anything. So trading with them, they are only importing, for example, from Nigeria, from Egypt, from South Africa, and places like that. So on the whole, there could be a much more and better, robust trade between the countries. It could be better than what is happening now, really. You know, because when you say, how do I rate it? It's not too good as at now. But at least it's picking up seriously. In particular, the trade between a lot of the African countries and South Africa, for example, or Nigeria. Basically, if you see this cross-border terrorism, a lot of it is because of unemployment. There's unemployment, a lot of people are jobless. Also, don't forget that especially in places like Chad, northern Niger, Sudan, there had been a lot of domestic wars which have created and left, and even what had happened in the in Tunisia, in Algeria, in even Egypt, some of those areas. So a lot of arms have moved into West Africa, and those arms, you know, people just use them freely because they are in need of food, they are in need of resources. And also, don't forget that sometimes the colonial powers have some vested interests in ensuring that there's always some problem happening so that they can come in to intervene and then have us at their mercy. And coupled with the fact that, as I told you earlier, issue of poverty, lack of education, will cause the people in those areas to pick up arms very easy. You give them a pittance and they are ready to go and fight. So the mercenaries are created and things like that. Well, the successful operation of this African Continental Free Trade depends on what level of preparations have been done. What has happened, if you recollect, early this year, maybe around, I think around March or so, about 44 African countries had endorsed the agreement. South Africa and Nigeria are among the 9 countries which didn't sign at that time. Our president was even supposed to have gone to sign the agreement at the last minute. His trip to Kigali, Rwanda, was cancelled. And it was good that it was cancelled because a lot of preparations have not been done. On the whole, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a good idea, but it has to be done properly. We have to look at the impact on the Nigerian industries, for example. What are the goods that will be used? What are the advantages to us? Let's have empirical evidence. And then let's also have a very well-researched list of the other countries. What agreements have they gotten with European countries? I give you an example. Some countries, they may not be producing anything. Once this Continental Free Trade Agreement is agreed, they may be importing goods, for example, from France, from Europe, from China. And then, because there is this free trade agreement, they can move those goods into countries like Nigeria and jeopardize our industrial setup, because then our factories will begin to lie fallow. Our goods may not be as competitive as the ones that are being brought in. And that will affect not only the employment position, because don't forget, this government is trying very hard to create employment. Employment cannot be created when manufacturing is down. Therefore, there is need to do better research, to take time to look at the implications of this agreement. So on the whole, we are not saying it's not a good agreement. It's a good agreement, but it's not something that should be... Well, you see, if you want to bring an investor into your country, there are a lot of basic things that the investors need. Investors want to make sure that the amount of money they are bringing into the country, at the end of the day, they will be able to repatriate their capital and also repatriate their profit. Not only that, they want to also ensure that there is peace, security, and stability in the country. If there's no peace, security, and stability, there will be no business. So these are some of the things they look at. Most importantly, also, I wouldn't say most importantly, because security is very, very important also. But they have to look at the infrastructural facilities available. If an investor is coming to Nigeria, for example, the first thing that they worry about is the issue of power, electricity. Without electricity, manufacturing, it cannot be a success. Without certain other basic amenities like good roads, good telecommunication system, water, and so on. These are things that are extremely important. Also, you have to look at manpower, the human capital, you know. In terms of human capital, Nigeria, for example, is a place which has, we export that actually, so it's not a big problem. Our biggest problem is the infrastructure. We are talking of the power and the roads which I mentioned earlier. And of course, security.
This is the much we can bring on this edition today. I am Esther Ephraim, your host. Thanks for watching.